I believe that the breathing is the doorway to the brain, to accessing, these, wider array of possible solutions. There's still going to be moments where you pucker up big time. Everybody does, especially when you're talking about startle response. That said, we know that the Buddhist monks that were trained, the Dalai Lama sent over a bunch of Buddhist monks to be examined in a laboratory for their fear response and brain activity in general. Dr. Richard Davidson, who I met, I went to a lecture at the National Institutes of Health a number of years ago and listened to a very interesting lecture about the power of meditation to change people's ability to deal with stress. And I'm on the same path, and I've already read his work. I already knew what he was going to say, more or less. And afterwards, I got to sit down and shake his hand and talk to him a little bit about this stuff. He found that the monks would, especially the really experienced ones, they didn't have a startle response. That, the person that sneaks up behind you with the air horn, that kind of, everybody has that, or so we thought. And this is suggesting that through mind training programs, through repetitively going back into the state of non-attachment and full awareness, we can alter the effects of our world on us. And that's cool. That gives hope, that our habits of instinctual responses. I mean, I think our instincts are a habit set. It was taught to us by our genes, or however you want to, sort of frame that in your mind. The fight, flight, and freeze instincts that unicellular organisms, they do the same kind of things. I'm gonna run away. I'm gonna protect myself. I'm gonna attack back. And it'll select that option. If we want to graduate beyond single cellular intelligence, stimulus and response, we got to make a little room for our brain to work, and that requires not just the better breathing, which of course Buddhist monks are pretty good at breathing, in terms of awareness and efficiency, but they also are very good at letting go of thought, of not identifying with thought, taking that idea of, it's not who you are, it's what you did. None of it is who you are from that perspective. It's all just a drama that's playing out. And I'm just, there is the observer. It's not even I am the observer. There is observation of this life called Brian, called Steve, called, anybody. It's the observation from the outside that I think lifts up the drama and the certain conclusion that you must defend, you must attack, you must feel bad about yourself, you must feel good about yourself. And it's all of it. I think it's a way that we tend to draw ourselves back into the ego state. That makes the whole big thing, sort of being tied to the tail of the dragon, getting dragged around, instead of feeling that subtle separateness of the observer, where ultimate compassion can flow back in. This psychology of adventure. I mean, any skydiver, any climber, kayaker, cave scuba diver, there is a philosophical side to you. Every one of you wouldn't do this stuff if there wasn't a philosophical meaning behind it. There's an introspective experience, and there's, sort of just observing, wow, I'm a happier dude when I go water skiing or whatever it is, I feel better about myself. I feel better in my body. I feel better about my life. Why? That's the doorway. I'm not going to immediately answer that. I think it's fair, because it's individual, it's conditional, it changes moment to moment. But man, if you ask that question, why do I feel better when I do these certain things? I think it leads towards, an affinity to want to do it more, but more importantly, to get to the underlying aspect of it. What is it that joins these experiences? I mean, it doesn't all have to be physical risks, but it works. It does work to scare the shit out of yourself and put yourself in an experience of wow, of grandeur, and holy crap, look where my skills got me. This is awesome. But there's more to it. There's something underneath it, this allowance of worthiness, this allowance of not ignoring, but letting go of all the other calls to my attention so that I can be in this moment. Because if I don't focus on this moment, I'm going to die a horrible death. Awesome. It draws me back away from TikTok and the thumb world. That's what I call that, the thumb world. It's the most closed thing. If we were a flower, a human being texting is a closed flower. Like energetically, in so many ways. I think that we need to just look at all these great exercises that do the opposite. That when you're blossoming, as you rappel off of a cliff, you're blossoming into this present moment. It's the mind saying, yes, I approve of this message. I approve of this activity. I approve of the role that I'm playing as I'm helping somebody tie their figure 8 knot before they climb. I approve of me checking your pin as we go to the plane. I approve of the smile that we exchange in the door before jumping out. I agree with everything we're doing. I agree that this is what I intended for my life. Bring it on, that's the why. And that's sort of the beginning of that conversation within anybody that points their mind in that direction. What do you love about adventure? What do you dig about these experiences that, it could kill you, kills people? All of these things do. And so does the couch. So does the couch probably kills a lot more people than parachutes do.
And much slower.
It's slow and agonizing, and there's lots of suffering mindset that leads there, because you're not being that person on the edge of the cliff. You're not being the person that you came in to be, the fearless adventurer. And I think that there's this rust of the soul that occurs when we're not being our highest self, because of our aversion to physical pain. I mean, got to tell you, I hiked 6 miles through the mountains a couple days ago. My legs still hurt. I'm glad that I got off the couch. And, I want people to just keep on exploring, deeper into what it is that's so good about this, whatever it is that you get off on. When you get to the root of what it is that you love about it, some key features, some really root things, then you can start to create experiences that have nothing to do with that context, but have that same root. One of my favorite stories of all time, Ramdas. I don't know if you know Ramdas, originally called Richard Alpert. He was a psychiatrist, Harvard guy, teacher, and he went off into a spiritual direction with his career. And he spent a lot of time in India learning, at the foot of the guru kind of thing, and really just passionately learning everything he could about the way to extricate ourselves from ego and suffering. And he was giving this lecture many years later as an older man, with gray beard and, by then probably long flowing robes, because he wasn't Harvard guy. He was, he wasn't Dr. Richard Alpert. He was now Ramdas, which means God's servant. And there's this woman in the front row, and a little old lady, and she's just, every word he says, she's like, oh yeah. And you know how, like, when somebody that you're talking to is responding in a way that proves that they get you, they get what you're saying at its most, sort of core element, They're following you. And after his talk, she came up to him to, to shake his hands. And he says, ma'am, I just got to ask. I mean, you really were on board, with this whole, the talk that I was giving, this obviously, spiritual focused talk, kind of enlightenment kind of talk. And he says, well, what do you do? What's your in, how did you get this, to the point where you were fully understanding it? She just smiles. She says, I crochet. And he said, at that point, I realized the game wasn't what I thought it was. That you can derive meaning from anything. You can derive insight from any context at all. Every grain of sand on the beach has a microcosm of the entire universe, a hologram of all you need within that one grain. And I think skydiving is a pretty good grain. It's it's an amazing avenue that brings so many different people these sort of enlightening insights and an opportunity to view themselves in a different way and take on scary stuff and not be scared. That's great. Just don't get so bummed on a rainy day that you cut yourself off from the access to it. That's one of the things I really want to say to the skydiving world. You're still a skydiver when you're on the ground. You're still a skydiver when you can't jump or don't want to jump because it's not safe, or you don't have the money, or you're in your third trimester. All right, you ride this wave as it is, and you're gonna find that there's crocheting or whatever, there's something else. You get into playing poker, the high risk of with hopefully not with money, but chocolates. Yeah.
We can receive those benefits to ourselves in all kinds of activities. Not just adrenaline inducing activities, but all kinds of activities.
Yep. I mean, there can be adrenaline associated with anything. Adrenaline is just an indication that you're paying attention to something that clearly you have decided you believe is something that requires your attention, that's worthy of your attention. If it's life or death, yeah, it's kind of a given that it's worthy. There's a planet coming, but if you're taking, your knitting circle very, very seriously, I'm sure that people get an adrenal response from time to time. But I think there is an element within the flow state that leads to these higher harmonics, the experiences of intense emotional connection to a flowing experience. I think there has to be some degree of perceptual risk, physical or psychological. Otherwise, it becomes observer, not involved in that. But it doesn't have to be physical. But that's certainly one of the things in the book Flow that he discussed. Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi, which is a big honking name, but worth reading the book Flow. And he's talking about how even the concert pianist, they're not worried they're going to break a hand. You know what I mean? They're not worried that somebody's going to, throw a bowling ball at them if they hit the wrong note, but they still have the worry because at its root, it's not only death that humans fear, it's ostracization. So you're no longer part of the tribe because you've been found unworthy, and so now we're getting kind of to the root of human behavior in a lot of ways. We certainly fear death, but we also fear being alone. And I don't mean just like solo, I mean deliberately alone because nobody wants you. That's like this fear thing. And then in walks the image of the ancient Chinese wise Taoist hermit. All right, you read old. I don't know if you do any reading of Taoism. It's spelled Tao. Taoism means the way, the flow, and that introduces the idea that you don't need anybody to feel your sense of worthiness, you feel your sense of connection to nature and to the universe, and to enjoy the flow of chopping wood and carrying water, of the most simplest parts of life, and to feel that everything has meaning. Even if you're just, scooping your bucket into the river to carry it up to your tiny little hut, you're still doing something that is sacred, because it's the flow of life, and that is sacred. So I think that's helpful, for me, when I get into this state of fear of ostracization, or I don't know if that's even a real word, but exclusion. I try to listen to those old dudes, those old Chinese dudes that were perfectly happy living in their little hut. They probably wore ratty old sandals or no shoes at all, and they were at peace.
I think often after, of course, after student status, after we get a few jumps in our belt, the fear of failure is much more significant than the fear of death often for skydivers. We're going to screw up this jump. We're going to screw up somebody else's good time.
Yep.
I think that fear is often more prevalent than fear of injury or fear of death once we get a few jumps.
Yep, absolutely true. I mean, you'll have moments, right, once in a while, where you have a malfunction, line twist, or whatever it is. Look down, can't find the drop zone. Everybody will continue to get moments of pucker, and that's fine. But yeah, that's my experience too. That most of it is about worrying about what other people think of me, because I don't fully feel worthy of my own competence, to assign my own comfort with my skills. I require a recent data point to prove that I'm competent. The long-term memory has nothing to do with self-esteem from the perspective of the ego. I think we got to get better at that one, and have a longer memory for our positive past and a shorter memory for our failures, because I wasn't trying to do that anyway. Any failure is like, that was not my intention. And if I am my intentions alone, then every time I went off the path into the briar patch, it's like, yeah, okay, it showed me where the path isn't. How many was it, 200? I forgot the number of experiments that were done with the light bulb to try to get it to work. And
A lot.
right, hundreds of, right, and then eventually Edison found the one that actually worked. And then he said, I didn't fail hundreds of times. I found hundreds of ways to not make a light bulb. So basically, there's a feed. So it tells you all, sort of most recent events. You can communicate directly with me or any of the other folks and ask questions. So just like Facebook. And then down here, the session recordings here, dating back, 3 years. Several times a week, and these are all an hour to an hour and a half at least. Most of them are an hour and a half, with the dates on there. And what we're working on now is also adding specifics of what we covered, and then the live events 3 times a week, like I said, and all those, have just got the link in here. Community conversations, improving your landings, these all have different videos or articles or things like that. Mind game. Lots and lots of virtual reality simulations showing, tweaks to the pattern, based on winds, different drop zones, things like that. All kinds of good stuff. Ground launching, a bunch of the talking skydives are on here as well. You name it, man. You name it. Even I added a new category this week, the holistically healthy skydiver, talking about nutrition and exercise and, how to feed our brains, all kinds of different things. That relate, it relates. Your performance is something that is going to vary based on how you feel. So I feel like approaching skydiving from a holistic perspective is essential. Somebody that has natural ability and understands the situation completely can be held back by their drinking problems. You know what I mean? Or, you know what I mean? Or what, there's all these different things that we have to be looking at, if we're all in, I am,
Yeah, no.
Everything I do is part of my skydiving training.
everything.
Um,
I think you'll love it. I think you'll love
yeah,
it.
no.
And people use it sort of like a podcast or on a road trip or something. You put in your earbuds or put it on the car, system and just
Sure.
listen to the conversations. And we get folks that are really new, and we get
Mhm.
folks that are instructors. We got base jumpers, wingsuit people. We got paraglider folks, because I like that stuff too. And
Yeah.
we'll talk about whatever the community wants. And believe me, I don't have all the answers. And that's the good thing about community, is that we can find the answers together.
Right. Absolutely.